Greetings and welcome to another edition of Montpelier Connection. I'm State Representative Mike Mrowicki from the Windham 4 District of Putney, Dummerston, and Westminster. This is another wrap-up edition for the 2016 legislative session, and today we have two of our two Windham County Senators, Becca Balint and Jeanette White.
Thank you.
All two of us.
That's right.
Welcome. Senator Balint, Becca, welcome.
Thank you.
You're on two committees in the Senate. House members only have one. Could you talk a little bit about some of the work they did and any highlights from the session?
Absolutely. So I was very proud to serve on economic development because it was one of my campaign platforms was to work on economic development. And I was very proud that in that bill, we were able to really think about the workforce and what are the other things that the workforce needs in addition to jobs. Okay, so we need housing that's more affordable. We need programs to help young families stay in Vermont. And so one of the things that was hugely successful was the first-time homebuyer down payment assistance program. It was even more successful than we thought it would be. We had many more people take advantage of it, and we were able to expand that program for a few more years. And I heard from many, many people across the state how thrilled they were that we were really starting to see this connection between jobs and housing. And the other piece that I felt very proud of along those lines was the work that we did in Senate institutions, which is not a committee that people necessarily think of as a committee in which you can have an impact on workforce or job creation. But we were able to set aside money to expand the, upgrade the labs at Vermont Technical College. And that was something that was so exciting because Dan Smith, he came in with a plan for what he would do if we had the money, because we gave him a challenge and said, well, if we could find it, what would you do? And he knew exactly what he wanted to do, because he felt very concerned that he was losing good students in Vermont to other technology schools because we didn't have updated labs. So we were able to get money for that. I visited the labs this past year, and they're beautiful. They are already keeping students there. And the other piece was we were able to do a similar thing, taking money from the institutions bill and putting it towards an expansion of labs and upgrades at Castleton as well. So we're seeing, as you know, Jeanette, you've served on the UVM Board of Trustees, and you know a lot more about UVM than I know. I'm learning a lot about the state colleges through my work on both those committees that I serve on. And we know that there's this gap. We do a great job graduating students from high school. And then there's this huge swath of students who don't go on to get any higher ed and are floundering a bit. So we know that there's a real opportunity at our state college system to hook those people in. So I feel really excited about that. And
at the same time, we have actually almost a surplus of jobs that are going unfilled right now. We do. We did a housing inventory through SevEds some years ago in which we were able to project out. We have quite a few jobs statewide, but specifically in Windham County as well, which a lot of people didn't realize, but that we don't have the workers as folks age out. Yeah. We had one particular company in Rockingham, and I don't want to misspeak, so I don't know exactly which one it was, but they started the inventory process for us. They looked at their numbers and they said, oh my gosh, in the next 15 to 20 years, we're in trouble. We don't have the people in the pipeline. So it is obviously a complex issue, but we know in order to retain jobs, the workforce needs to be here, or the companies are going to have to, by necessity, look somewhere else to locate. So we can talk a little bit about that more later.
Absolutely.
So, Jeanette, welcome.
Thanks.
Thanks. I want to say right now, too, it's been great working with both of you. Your first session here, I think you did a great job.
I appreciate that.
We've got a great mentor here who is more than just the person I drive up sometimes when we carpool. But it's been great to work with both of you this session. So thank you for your good work. Jeanette, you're on two committees and you chair a committee?
I chair government operations in the morning and am on judiciary in the afternoon. And kind of like institutions, government operations sounds a little bit dry, questionable. What do you do anyway? But we did a couple things this year, or this past session, that I think were really are going to make a difference in Vermont. One was the dental bill. And the reason we got involved in the dental bill is because our committee licenses professions. So
what's the office that's
Office of Professional Regulation, and they are under the Secretary of State's office, and they're under our purview. So we last year, actually, that was the second time we passed the bill out of our committee, and it didn't make it out of the Senate the first time, but then last year it made it out of the Senate, and this year the House passed it also. So it'll create a new level of professional that's above a dental hygienist and not as high as a dentist. It'll be licensed to do 34 procedures, if that's important, but it goes beyond a dental hygienist. And I think it's a very, very exciting. It'll provide more access to dental care for people, for kids, people on Medicaid, adults, people in nursing homes, the whole thing. It's a very exciting project. I'm so happy that it passed.
I want to say I think it's probably one of the best bills we passed this year. The need for more access to dental care. And would you say this position is similar to nurse practitioners or physician's assistants?
Probably closer to a nurse practitioner than a physician's assistant. Mm-hmm. But it had a lot of resistance from some of the dentists and from the Dental Association, but it had support from a number of dentists also, some of who were reluctant to support it because of the position of the Dental Society. But in the end, it passed, and I think that we'll see. And it is a new program that's going to be offered at Vermont Technical College, because they do the dental hygienists, and so they're going to use the. They're all ready to go with they've been ready to go for 2 years.
And as you know, there's such a strong need.
Oh,
there's such a need.
Yeah, and it will be the only school around here also. So people from other states will be able to participate.
Which campus will that be at? Do you know? Will it be up in Williston or?
No, isn't the dental hygienist is in Randolph? I think.
I believe so, but I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it's in Randolph, but I'm not exactly sure. So we also passed automatic voter registration,
which we were very excited about.
Yeah, which means that when you get a driver's license in Vermont, you have to already answer those questions. Are you a citizen? Are you over? You'll be asked if you're over 18, but then are you a citizen? Are you a resident? Where do you live? And you can be registered to vote. And it's an opt-out program. So unless you opt out of registering to vote, you'll be automatically registered to vote.
And the same-day voter, too. We also passed.
Yeah, we did that last year, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. So we did.
It's just these two bills that I was thinking about to expand access.
Right.
It's wonderful.
We did. We passed. We took a lot of testimony on both of those, on both of those bills, because our committee also deals with elections, municipal issues, law enforcement. We did a lot with law enforcement this year too. We're going to do a lot more next year with law enforcement because there's a lot to do. But let's see.
Well, I think I just want to say that while other states are trying to limit access to voting, it says a lot for what you did in the state of Vermont, that here we are trying to expand access, because democracy works when people participate.
And it is important to get people to participate, and if you can make what we found is if you can make their first experience getting registered or voting a positive one, then they'll be a voter for life, as opposed to people who only get excited when there's a particular issue and then vote on that issue. It's good that they vote when they're excited, but it's better if they're a lifetime voter and take the whole process seriously. Right. So in judiciary, we actually looked at a lot of issues in our criminal justice system. We continued and expanded the community monitoring system that the Windham County Sheriff.
Success.
It's very successful.
This is the electronic bracelet monitoring.
And we've expanded that so it can reach into other counties. Gave more pilot money. Instead of making it a full program now, we've expanded the pilot for 2 more years and funded it, and it will expand into other counties. We also created a youthful offender status, which is, at one point in the 90s, we were all law and order.
Right. And we 3 strikes and you're out. It was
well, and I don't know that Vermont had 3 strikes and you're out, but nationally we did. And we started putting kids as young as 13 and 14 into the adult criminal justice system. And over the years, what we found is that their brain development is, we know a lot more about brain development now. Right. And so we created youthful offender status, which means that under 17 will go to juvenile court, and it'll start in juvenile court. If need be, it can be upped to criminal court, but it'll start in juvenile court, which is part of the family court system. And then it'll gradually go up so that 18 and then 19 over the next couple of years. And that's a huge, and our chair, Senator Sears, has worked with youthful offenders all his life.
That's his background.
That's his background. And he said he was just stunned to find himself in this position, because 10 years ago he would have said, no, I'm not going to go there. But he, as with other topics this year, listened, paid attention, listened to the testimony, and here he was, and he was a champion for this. So we did that, and we also worked some on privacy issues, and privacy issues, and driving with suspended licenses. Right. So lots of things.
If I could follow up on something Senator White was just saying, because I know it's something all 3 of us really believe in, which is looking at criminal justice reform. Mm-hmm. And while you were talking, I was remembering when I was pregnant with my first child, the doctor said, you may not have a difficult pregnancy, but you always pay the piper when you're a parent. So maybe they're going to be colicky the first 3 months because you didn't have. I did have morning sickness, but she said I've learned in my practice that you always pay the piper, and it's the same thing. I was just talking with a constituent this morning about this issue. We have to pay money to take care of these young people who are making poor choices younger on. So we're either going to pay the money now up front for more progressive programs that will help them, or we're going to pay the money later through incarceration. So there is no way not to pay the money, and wouldn't you rather have the children become teens and young adults who feel better about themselves and then are integrated into society? That's what we all want. And so,
and just I'll tell you, I learned more about brain development than I ever wanted to, thinking I wasn't on the Health and Welfare Committee, but
no, it's critical.
We had these people come in, and I was just stunned. I was just blown away by what they were saying about the way the brain develops, and the parts of the brain that develop last, and
the impulse control,
the impulse and consequence. That whole part of the brain is the last.
The prefrontal cortex and executive functions.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you. Yes.
Well, they had, some of them had pretty odd names, but I'm not going to go there.
And so
because I can't remember them.
We also, you were reminding me when you were talking that we also looked at a lot of these issues in Senate institutions. And one of the things we did is that we created, as part of the institutions bill, a new committee that's really looking at going forward over the next 10 to 15 years what the criminal justice system should look like in Vermont in terms of the incarceration ends of things. What are we getting right? What are we not getting right? Who needs to be at the table? And these are really important conversations to have, because many of us want to bring our prisoners home from out of state, and yet, as we know, there's financial considerations. And so what are our values? Are we living our values? And if we're not right now, how do we change the structure so that we're able to do that?
Mm-hmm. And it dovetails with one of the ways this manifests, and it's in the opioid crisis we have now. And I think it highlights the continued need for more mental health services, for more addiction services, for more prevention services. A lot of good work going on out there, but I think there's a real hole. I've noticed when my kids were in college, there's no prevention going on in places where there's some of the highest abuse and where adult habits, because of brain development, get set in place. I think that's a real hole in the prevention system that we really need to. And I've talked to Barbara Samaglia about this, that I hope we can start to focus as much. You know, up to 18, we do a lot of great work but I think it needs to be ongoing as well. And along with that, probably a whole nother conversation is how we can better support our designated agencies, because they're
stretched.
Yeah. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about process. What we do in the legislature, I think, is much more about process than product, but most people focus on product. Now, we have talked a lot about jobs, creating jobs, or creating infrastructure that can support jobs, but also keeping jobs here. Now, we did some good work, I think, to help keep, I think, 2 companies locally were looking across the river, Vermeds and GSP. But I think you were part of this. There was a real concerted effort.
It was a multi-pronged effort, and one of the things that is important to remember about the jobs at GS Precision is that they're high-paying jobs. There's opportunity for advancement, and at some point, the Norm Schneeberger, who is, I'm not sure if he's currently the CEO or I'm not sure what his title is at this point, because I know
president.
President, exactly. But he was looking to train employees that would be streamlined into the jobs that he had there. So even before we expanded the ability to create more jobs there, he was looking at creating his own on-site training program, so that he knew the folks who came in, they were going to get the exact skills that they were going to need to come onto the floor. And so you're right, they were looking to relocate, partly because our labor shed stretches from Wilmington all the way over to Keene. And so he had a fair number of people who were from the Keene area, and he thought, well, it may be better for us and our bottom line. And he made a joke at the ribbon cutting that the governor said, no, we're going to keep you here. And he said, well, that's not going to happen. And we all worked really hard to make sure those jobs stayed here. So one thing I wanted to talk about in terms of the money that was allocated from the emergency board was we have changed the structure in this year's economic development bill. So prior to the changes that were made this year, it was a committee of 4. It was the 4 chairs of the money committees, so appropriations on both sides, Ways and Means and Finance, and the governor also had a seat at the table. And people felt, those of us in Windham County felt thrilled that the jobs were created at GS Precision. I think some people felt that perhaps the process was not transparent enough. So now the group that will be making decisions on that will be the Joint Fiscal Committee. So you'll have more people at the table to discuss it. But bottom line for us in Windham County, we have really good high-paying jobs at GS Precision that might have left, and it's huge. Yeah. Because that helps everyone. That's not just those, as we know, it ripples out. It's not just those employees and their families, it's our downtowns, because people have more money to spend, as you know.
Even beyond that, as somebody who's worked in the nonprofit sector, who's worked in human services, those areas, human services and nonprofit, depend on a thriving economy.
Absolutely.
Without a good economy, the money's not going to trickle down or be dispersed otherwise. So it's really essential that we keep jobs, and as Tip O'Neill and others have said, there's no social program like a good job. Yeah. Jeanette, do you have a bill you'd like to talk about that would talk about the process of trying to get something through?
Well, I was trying to think about that, and the process is so different with every bill. I mean, there were some bills that left the Senate that never got out of the House. There were probably bills that left the House that never got out of the Senate. So it's kind of hard to think about how that works, but I guess one that really worked well was the forester licensing program that started in the House, because in Vermont, foresters don't have to be licensed, and that's caused a lot of problems for people. And it isn't that everybody in the woods doesn't know what they're doing, but there are aspects to being a forester that plan ahead, that understand the silviculture and the whole health of the forest. So it started in the House.
Silviculture is best practices in forestry?
Something like it's it's working with the forest as a complex ecosystem. Yeah, so it isn't just cutting down 12 trees. That isn't forestry. So it started in the House and made it through the Government Operations Committee, and I don't know if it had a lot of input from Natural Resources over there, or it did, and then it came to the Senate.
So I think Mike Hebert and Vernon had a lot to do with the bills around forest.
Okay. And then it came to the Senate, it came to Government Operations, because again, we're the licensing committee. And we informally worked with the Natural Resources Committee. They didn't formally take the bill, but so we made some changes in it, and then it went to the Finance Committee because there's fees in it, so it has to go to the Finance Committee. So it goes there, and they determine whether the fees are okay. And they actually, I don't know if this is true in the House or not, but in the Senate, the Appropriations Committee is only supposed to deal with the money. But of course, they don't. They deal with everything. And their rationale for that is, well, we can't really deal with the money unless we understand the whole issue. The Finance Committee in the Senate can do anything they want. They
do.
Well, they do. I actually had this conversation with Tim at the end of the session, and he challenged me to find a bill where they did, and I couldn't.
Where they had overstepped their
where they could have done much more than they did, because I say that all the time. I say, you guys take these bills and you do whatever you want to them, and I couldn't find one. So he chastised me a little bit for keeping that rumor going, but they do have the authority to do whatever they want. So it went there for the fees, and then it went to the floor of the Senate, and there were changes. So it went back to the House, and they, in their wisdom, just accepted our brilliant changes, and then it went to the governor's desk. But there's a lot of interplay then between the House Government Operations Committee and my committee, and the chairs kind of work together to make sure that if they're going to start this bill, we'll make sure we pick it up because it's important to them. We'll pick it up. If we're going to start a bill, do the same thing. So it is a lot of process, but the thing to remember, I think, in the process is that for anything to happen, you have to have 76, 16, and 1. If you don't have 76 House members to vote for it, 16 senators, and a governor to sign, it's dead.
Yeah. So it is quite a process, the way the founders wanted it to be.
And you know, in Maine they have joint House and Senate committees, and I don't like that. And I know people say it would be more efficient. And it seems to me that the only time that really makes sense is if you have an expert coming from a distance and you can both listen to it. Right. But if you had a House and Senate committee together, you'd have 17 people. You'd never have time for discussion. You'd never have interaction with the witnesses. And you don't have two sets of eyes.
Right. The checks and balances.
Yeah. From each I think it's very important to have it go through the process twice.
I agree. Yeah. A couple of bills I want to ask you to comment on. And another area where Vermont was bucking national trends, and I think this was really important for us to make statements on them as well as to serve Vermonters. One bill was providing greater access to birth control for both women and men. Right. And at a time when around the country, accesses for women to receive basic health care services and family planning are being challenged and threatened. The other was a bill the governor just signed prohibiting conversion therapy. Comments?
Yeah, they were both very important, and the Health and Welfare Committee, I think, did a great job taking testimony on them and being very upfront and forthright about them. And there, as I remember it, there wasn't a single question on the floor on either of them.
No, there was a technical concern.
But there weren't any philosophical questions, and I think that they both just passed on a voice vote, unanimous vote, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's something that voters really count on us for in Vermont, is to be progressive on issues like women's health. That it's not You know, it's interesting when you listen into the national conversation, and sometimes I know here in Vermont, I feel like, oh gosh, is that the national conversation about that? That women should have access to excellent health care for their bodies. And it benefits not just that woman and that family, it benefits the entire community. And I think we're good about really seeing that connection.
You know, one of the things that always strikes me is that we talk a lot about kind of the big bills that we do. And this is a big bill, but it didn't get a lot of press. It didn't get, it wasn't a very glitzy bill, neither one of them.
Right.
We set up a group to look at our alimony laws. Our alimony laws are atrocious. They haven't been changed since 1950s or something. And those are, so if you really look at the things that we accomplished that aren't those big, glitzy things that are going to attract a lot of media attention, we got some important things done. And
I think too that oftentimes people forget back home when we're in session and when we're not. So when you look at, right? So if you look at the number of days we have in Montpelier to get this work done.
64.
Right? There you go, right? And so the alimony piece, you're right. Like that was a sleeper bill that not a lot of people were paying attention to, but I know that I've been talking with constituents quite a bit about this issue, as I'm sure you both have as well, that it's overdue.
It is.
So, yeah.
Where time is starting to run short, but I wanted to ask, in deference to former Speaker Michael Bohusky, he used to frame things when he was Speaker, when we wanted to do something as, how is this going to help Mrs. Murphy who lives down the street? How is this going to help the average Vermonter? And I think you just answered the question about family planning and access to health care. Are there other bills that might not have been?
Well, we haven't talked at all about the paid sick leave bill,
and
that's huge. That people know that they're going to be able to bank some sick time, not just for themselves to use when they're sick, but when a family member needs either care or needs to go to the doctor. It's enormous.
Well, I have to say, whenever I go out to eat now, and I see somebody there sneeze, I'm thinking, it's the last place you want somebody who's sick coming to work.
Right, exactly.
And then again, if moms need to take care of, you know, someone said middle age is when you're taking care of both your kids and your parents, and you're in the middle of that. There's all sorts of scenarios, but
I was thinking about another one too. Senator Nitka brought a bill before us hoping that we could make some changes concerning the landlord-tenant laws around subletters, because she had several instances of, I want to make sure I characterize it right, I believe they were elderly people who had been taken advantage of by subletters, and they moved in and then they no longer felt safe in their home, and we did not have any statutory language that had been codified around what a subletter is, what are the rights and responsibilities that the tenant has and the landlord, and we did make some, I think, some concrete changes that will make it easier for landlords to move forward with getting those folks out who have no right to be there. And so it's interesting because it ties into the process piece, which is we knew when it left the Senate that more work needed to be done in the House, that we hadn't gotten it exactly right even when it left our chamber. But we worked together. We brought all the people in who, you know, both landlord associations, tenant associations, people who work in legal aid, and we were able to craft a bill that gave protections to those vulnerable folks who sometimes sublet a room, and then they find that the person that they've sublet to is not who they said they were. Yeah.
I think another issue that will affect people is the bill around the use of prescription opioids, because I think that we've found that there's a lot of over-prescribing, and you walk away with...
When you say over-prescribing, what does that mean?
Well, what it means is I have an operation on my wrist. When I break my wrist, and I can get a month's worth of opiates. I don't need a month's worth. If I need them, I can go back, but I don't need to go home with a month's worth.
So there's limits now.
The bill originally called for a hard limit, but that doesn't make any sense that
right,
the legislatures, doctors need to be doing that. So I think that that is going to have an impact on the people having them in their medicine cabinet.
Right. Because we know this is part of the problem.
Diversion.
Right. Yeah. So I
quote
think
unquote diversion.
Yeah, I think that's going to. I think that's going to have an impact, a positive impact on people.
And I think too, something that I know Senator White has cared about for a long time, and you as well, is the issues surrounding getting better access to health care and insurance. And so I felt really proud that we moved along on trying to get funding for the Dr. Dinosaur study, that if we expand it and we're able to cover children up to age 26, it frees up businesses in terms of that cost burden. It also helps families feel like they know there is some wiggle room before those children need to find good paying jobs with benefits. And so I'm pleased. For a while it wasn't clear whether we were going to be able to get the money for that study, but it did come through, and I'm excited to move forward on that.
We also put in money in the healthcare committee did this primarily, but they sweet talked Big Pharma into giving money for a couple different projects by putting a new charge on them in the state. And I don't know exactly how the charge works, but one of the goals is a pilot project to look at different ways of treating pain other than opiates. And that is very exciting, I think, because they in the original language it stressed acupuncture, but the final language in the budget bill talked about acupuncture and other modalities that can deal with chronic and severe pain without the use of opioids, and that is a huge issue. It's
right.
like 4 lines in the budget bill, but it's going to have, that pilot project could have huge ramifications.
And that's just a great point, Senator, because people often speak derisively about pilot projects, but that's how you figure out. It's the Petri dish. You figure out if it's going to work. And so if we're able to get some wiggle room there on how you can treat pain in alternative ways, that is money well spent on a pilot. That is, and that's true for the other pilot projects that we've had throughout your time and your tenure at the legislature. So whenever people sort of roll their eyes at pilot, I'm like, no. That's how real change gets made.
Right, and or you might find out that it doesn't work.
Exactly, and then you're not
going to keep throwing money after whatever it is that you were thinking might work. Yeah.
There's a deliberate process.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I thought that was very exciting.
A few minutes left here. I know there's limited time, but we appreciate you taking the time. Before we get moving on to, I don't want to be presumptuous and talk about last year, mention some highlights and maybe things you'd like to think about should you be reelected. And I'd like to start, talking about from the very basics. Everything they say emanates from the big bill, the budget. Once again, we balanced the budget. Once again, we kept spending within the rate of growth of revenues, and for the first time since people can remember, we didn't use one-time money.
Right, which is also a huge shift.
I feel like there was an interesting piece in the Times today about the reality is that Republicans tend to talk a lot about fiscal responsibility, but when you look at the data, the last 2 presidents to balance a budget were Democrats, and the economy tends to function better under Democrats. And I would say the same thing right here in Vermont. I think we've done a real good job keeping our fiscal house in order. And because everything emanates from that. Are there things that you're looking to do next year that didn't quite get done this year and might impact the budget? Or
Right. I was thinking as I was driving over here about my biggest disappointment in this last year is that I've been working with Representative Baser from the Addison area around this new way of thinking about how we build what we were calling workforce housing, modest homes, and getting the cost of the infrastructure removed from the cost of the home, because we know that with the crushing student debt that so many young families have, it just isn't affordable to buy a new build. So it made it that the speaker loved it, the pro tem loved it, everybody was shepherding it through. We had a lot of bipartisan support. It looked like it was going to happen, and then the funding got cut in the last few days because the money was needed elsewhere. And I'm not going to second guess whether that was the right choice or not, but I would like us to continue to make movement on this issue, this housing issue, because we know we have a workforce crisis and people need to have a place to live in order to increase the workforce. So that was disappointing, but some of these things, as you well know, take many years. So, yeah.
So one of the things that I think we didn't get done as much this year as I would have liked was government operations looks at the structure of government, and there are 3 areas where I would like us to look much closer. One is around organizational reform, and I think this can have a huge impact on the budget. It can both save money and it can, I think, deliver better services. One, we had a discussion very late in the session on splitting up the Agency of Human Services, and I know that was pretty controversial, and the House chose not to even take it up. But it was hard to get anybody to testify in favor of it because the administration was opposed to it. So nobody's going to testify. Right. But we did, off camera, get people to testify that it was the exact right thing to do. So I would like to pursue that next year as one of the organizational, so you'd have an agency of health and an agency of human services. And
would mental health be included in that?
Mental health is part of health. Yes.
But it hasn't always been looked at that way,
right,
even on committees.
Well, you have health and you have human services. Then the other one is how we do our licensing through the Office of Professional Regulation. They license 60,000 professionals in this state. There are 55,000 others that are licensed through the department, the Agency of Natural Resources, the Agency of Education, the Department of Health. We need to, that's all duplicative and it doesn't serve us well. So I think that we can streamline that and provide better service to licensees out there. And then the other one is not so much, well, public safety. How we provide law enforcement services in the state as a whole, through at the state level, but also here we have municipal departments, we have sheriffs, and we have the state police, and then we have others like in Fish and Wildlife and Department of Liquor Control that are law enforcement officers, and we need to have a better system for looking at how we provide law enforcement in the state. And we've talked about that for a while. We have done study after study after study, and I have a legislative council person this year pulling all those studies together and summarizing them for us so we can start in January.
Is that because there are silos that are entrenched in?
Well, and it's because funding comes from different places. The sheriffs, for example, the only thing the state funds them for is transport of prisoners. Other than that, and the county gives them a partial sheriff's salary and the building. Everything else they have to go find someplace if they want to do any other services. Municipal departments are paid for by the municipalities. So the Brattleboro Police Department is paid for by Brattleboro. Putney doesn't pay for the use of Brattleboro. And then the troopers, and we've never really defined what their role is supposed to be. And so many people think they provide primary law enforcement services. I don't think that should be a role of the state police. I think they should do major crimes and highway patrol. But it's going to take a lot of, and as you can well imagine, there are 80 local law enforcement agencies, 80 of them across the state, plus all the ones at the state level. So it's going to be just even figuring out how to sanction police officers, how to decertify them if you need to do that, was a nightmare. And we still didn't get it quite done, almost. It'll be done January 19th.
So anything simple is is not true.
It's not, right, exactly.
Those who, it's an increasingly complex world, and Vermont is not immune to that. So when people try and claim that we can simplify all this, I think it flies in the face of reality.
Right.
But we can do some simple things, like giving West Brattleboro the right to put up a sign that says, "Welcome to West Brattleboro," which I got put into the transportation bill, because currently they couldn't do it.
Right.
So now they can.
But I was just saying, it is an increasingly complex
world.
Yes,
absolutely.
It is.
We like to think of Vermont as a little bit immune from the rest of the world, but we've got a lot of the same challenges. Any closing thoughts?
I would just like to add, because it dovetails on what you were saying about the law enforcement issues. I serve on the Fair and Impartial Policing Committee. I'm one of 2 legislators who serves on that. And I was at a big meeting the other night about the release of traffic data and traffic stops. And what came out of that meeting is a frustration, I think, sometimes with the activist community around this issue, that the Vermont State Police has no jurisdiction over the other law enforcement agencies.
Right, they don't.
So they can do this and make it part of their mission to become more fair and impartial in the way that they police, and they can serve as a model for others. But they can't tell the local law enforcement how to do the job. And so this became a tension in the room, and so I think that's also part of this issue, which is for us as Vermonters to understand the system better, so that we're speaking from a place of understanding.
Yeah, because I think that there are people who think that, that the Attorney General can control the state's attorneys. Not so. That the Commissioner of Public Safety can control law enforcement in the state. Not so.
Exactly.
I mean,
It's not really a hierarchy.
No, it isn't at all.
No.
It isn't at all. And if we wanted to do something like that, if we wanted to have them all equal and all marching to the same drum, then we'd have to pony up and pay for it.
Right,
and
absolutely.
And because troopers, as we know, get better pay and get better benefits. And
so.
We're heading into an election season, both nationally and on the state level. In Vermont, all legislators are elected every 2 years. I'm glad to hear both of you are running again. In the meantime, we're still acting as legislators, and if people need things done, how can they get in touch with you?
So you can call me at home at 802-257-4162. I'm the only Balint in the book, as they say. You can also email me at my legislative address, bbalint@leg.state.bt.us.
And I'm Jay White at the same address. And my phone is 387-4379, and it's in the phone book.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time, and look forward to talking some more as the year goes on. And thanks to all the people here again at BCTV. I say it enough, and I don't think I can say it enough. We are very grateful to the work they do in bringing local parts of our community to viewers at home. So thanks a lot for all the work here. Until next time, this is Mike Mrowicki. Bye-bye now.